The billionaire's son poured scalding coffee on the waitress to punish her for wetting his sleeve. The entire restaurant fell silent. No one dared to intervene, but he didn't know who the man sitting in the corner was. And at that moment, Marcus Blackwell had just awakened the wolf he should never have provoked. The scalding coffee hit Elena Martinez's left shoulder and neck. She screamed, collapsed onto the cold white marble floor. Her skin turned bright red, blistering immediately beneath her soaked black uniform. The smell of burning flesh spread throughout the luxurious space of the Sterling Rose restaurant, and Marcus Blackwell laughed, phone held high, filming Elena's agony as if live-streaming entertainment. The screen showed thousands of views skyrocketing on Instagram. "That's what happens when you wet my $50,000 Armani vest. You poor trash," Marcus sneered, his voice slurred with alcohol. "Learn your place, peasant." Nobody moved. 20 staff members of the Sterling Rose kept their eyes fixed on the floor. They needed this job. In Manhattan, the most expensive area of New York, working for Blackwell Industries was a privilege. Losing this job meant being blacklisted. No one would dare hire them. The elite guests seated in deep red velvet chairs suddenly found their phones fascinating. Looking down, silent, ignoring, they knew who Marcus Blackwell was. The spoiled son of Victoria Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Industries, the most powerful woman on the East Coast. Touching Marcus meant touching the entire empire. Derek, the restaurant manager, hurried over, but not to help Elena. Instead, he knelt beside Marcus, his voice trembling. "Mr. Blackwell, we sincerely apologize. This employee will be terminated immediately," and silence. The deep voice cut through, not loud, but enough to make the entire room fall deathly silent. In the corner by the window overlooking Times Square, a man set down his teacup onto a white porcelain saucer. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if time belonged to him and him alone. Damien Wolfe rose to his feet. He stood 6'3". His charcoal Brioni suit, perfectly tailored, hugged his solid frame. A long scar ran from his left jaw up near his ear, a remnant of a war he never spoke of. But the most terrifying thing wasn't his appearance. It was his wolf-gray eyes, cold, empty of emotion. The eyes of someone who had witnessed too many deaths. The eyes of someone who had caused too many deaths. And the eyes of someone who no longer feared anything in this world. Damien Wolfe stepped out from the shadows of the corner. Each footstep echoed evenly on the marble floor. The entire restaurant went dead silent. The wealthy guests still pretended to look at their phones, but their eyes slid sideways, tracking the stranger approaching Marcus Blackwell. And in New York's underworld, those who had heard of Damien Wolfe all knew one thing. When the wolf awakens, blood will spill. If you believe in karma, hit subscribe, like this video, share it, because what happens next will satisfy your soul. Damien stopped 3 feet from Elena. She lay curled on the marble floor, trembling hands pressed against the blistering burns on her shoulder and neck. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat and coffee stains. Her breaths came in short, painful gasps. The smell of burned skin hung heavy in the air, making several guests cover their noses. "Call an ambulance," Damien said. His voice was low, calm, but it carried through the silent restaurant like a command from someone used to being obeyed. Derek looked up from where he knelt beside Marcus, his face pale. "Sir, I don't think that's necessary. We can handle this internally." Mr. Blackwell didn't mean call an ambulance. Damien's eyes shifted to Derek. The manager's words died in his throat. Something in those wolf-gray eyes made Derek's hands shake. I can't, sir. Mrs. Blackwell would. She wouldn't approve of involving outside authorities. This is a private matter. We'll take care of our employee ourselves." Damien's jaw tightened. He turned slowly toward Marcus, who was still holding his phone, grinning at the screen as comments flooded his Instagram livestream. Laughing emojis. Fire emojis. Comments like "savage" and "she deserved it" scrolled past. "Kneel down," Damien said quietly, and apologized to her. Marcus lowered his phone. For a moment, he simply stared at Damien, as if trying to process whether he'd heard correctly. Then he burst out laughing. The sound was ugly, entitled, the laugh of someone who had never faced consequences in his entire 26 years of life. "Are you fucking serious?" Marcus sneered, pocketing his phone. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my mother is?" "I know exactly who you are," Damien said. "A coward who burns defenseless women." Marcus's face flushed dark red. He snapped his fingers. "Marco, get this nobody out of my sight." 4 men in black suits emerged from near the entrance, built like walls, earpieces, the kind of private security money could buy. They moved toward Damien with the confidence of men who had intimidated countless people before. Damien didn't move, didn't even turn to look at them. His eyes remained locked on Marcus. The 4 security guards stopped 5 feet away. The lead one, Marco, a man with a shaved head and a neck like a tree trunk, stepped forward. His hand moved toward Damien's shoulder. Then Marco saw Damien's eyes. Really saw them. Marco's hand froze in midair. His face went from confident to pale in the span of a heartbeat. He'd worked security for 15 years, dealt with drunk celebrities, aggressive paparazzi, stalkers, and threats of every kind. But he'd never seen eyes like these. Eyes that belonged to someone who didn't just threaten violence, someone who was violence, distilled into human form. Marco took a step back. Marco? Marcus's voice rose, confused. What the hell are you doing? The other 3 guards had gone still. One of them, the youngest, had his hand on his concealed weapon, but he wasn't drawing it. He was staring at Damien like a rabbit staring at a wolf. Sir, Marco said, his voice unsteady. I think we should. Perhaps we should let Mr. Blackwell handle this situation himself. What? Marcus's voice cracked. I pay you $50,000 a month. Do your fucking job. But none of the 4 guards moved. They stood frozen, sweat beading on their foreheads despite the restaurant's air conditioning. In that moment, every single one of them had made the same calculation. Whatever Marcus Blackwell paid them wasn't worth dying for, and the man standing in front of them was death itself, wearing an expensive suit. Marcus's face twisted with rage and humiliation, his fists clenched. Fine, I'll do it myself. You useless. He lunged at Damien, right arm cocked back for a wild, drunken punch. Damien moved. It happened so fast that most of the guests didn't even see it. One moment Marcus was charging forward. The next moment, Damien's left hand had caught Marcus's wrist mid-swing. His right hand shot forward, palm heel strike directly into Marcus's nose. The crack of breaking cartilage echoed through the sterling rose. Marcus's scream was high-pitched, almost childlike. He crumpled to the floor, both hands clutching his face. Blood poured between his fingers, spreading across the white marble in dark crimson streams. His nose sat at an unnatural angle, already swelling. My nose, Marcus wailed, his voice muffled and wet. You broke my fucking nose! Damien released Marcus's wrist and let him collapse. He turned away from the sobbing man as if he no longer existed, walking back to where Elena lay. The crowd of staff and guests parted like water before him. He knelt beside Elena, his movements suddenly gentle. The terrifying coldness in his eyes softened, replaced by something almost human. Concern, perhaps, or recognition. The look of someone who had seen suffering before and could not ignore it. You need to go to the hospital, he said quietly. His voice had lost its edge, becoming almost kind. Those burns need immediate treatment. Elena looked up at him through tear-blurred eyes. She tried to speak, but only a choked sob came out. Her whole body shook with pain and shock, and the sudden, overwhelming relief that someone had finally stood up for her. Damien reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew a white envelope. Thick. The kind of thickness that only came from substantial cash. He placed it gently in Elena's trembling hand. $10,000, he said. Enough for the hospital. Enough to rest for a few weeks. Then he pulled out a plain white business card. No name, no title, just a single phone number embossed in black. He laid it on top of the envelope. If you need anything, he said simply. Elena stared at the envelope, then up at him. Her lips moved, trying to form words. Questions. Why? Who are you? What do you want from me? But Damien was already standing. He buttoned his suit jacket, smooth and unhurried, as if he hadn't just broken a man's nose in front of 50 witnesses. Go to the hospital, he repeated. I'll take care of the rest. He walked toward the exit. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Measured steps that carried him past Marcus, still bleeding and crying on the floor. Past Derek, who had gone white as paper. Past the security guards who kept their eyes down like children caught misbehaving. Past the wealthy guests who were no longer pretending to look at their phones but openly filming everything. Damien Wolfe reached the door, pushed it open, and stepped out into the bright New York morning. Behind him, the sterling rose remained frozen in stunned silence. Marcus Blackwell lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath his face, his muffled sobs the only sound in the entire restaurant, and Elena Martinez clutched the white envelope to her chest, feeling the weight of more money than she'd ever held in her life, watching the stranger who had saved her disappear into the crowded Manhattan streets. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes after a staff member finally called 911. By then, Elena had slipped in and out of consciousness 3 times. The pain from her burns so intense that her body kept shutting down to protect itself. The paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher, started an IV, covered her wounds with sterile dressings. She barely registered any of it. The world had become nothing but white-hot agony and the distant sound of sirens. Bellevue Hospital emergency room, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and blood. A nurse cut away Elena's ruined uniform, while a doctor examined the burns covering her left shoulder, neck, and part of her chest. 18% of her body surface area, second-degree burns across most of it, third degree in 3 spots where the coffee had pooled longest. "We need to get her to the burn unit," the doctor said, his voice clinical, detached. "She'll need debridement, possible skin grafting. The third-degree areas won't heal on their own." Another nurse was filling out paperwork. "Insurance information?" Elena's voice came out as a whisper. "No insurance." The nurse's pen paused. "None at all? I can't afford it." The doctor looked up from examining her burns. His expression shifted slightly. Not unkind, but resigned. The look of someone who had seen this situation 1,000 times before. "The surgery will cost approximately $45,000, he said gently. "That's not including the hospital stay, medications, or follow-up care. Do you have family who can help?" $45,000. Elena's vision blurred. Not from tears, from the sudden, crushing weight of impossibility. She made $14 an hour at the Sterling Rose. She worked 70 hours a week across 3 jobs and still barely scraped together enough for rent and food. $45,000 might as well have been $45 million. "I don't have it," she whispered. "I don't have anything." The doctor nodded slowly. "We'll do what we can with pain management and wound care for now. But Miss Martinez, without proper treatment, these burns will scar severely. There's also significant risk of infection." He didn't say the rest. He didn't need to. Elena understood. Without the surgery, she would carry these scars forever. Deep, disfiguring tissue damage that would mark her as damaged goods in a world that valued appearance. In a city where waitresses competed for every job based partly on how they looked. As the nurses worked, Elena's mind drifted back, always back to the same memories she tried so hard to forget. Her mother's face, gaunt and yellow from the cancer eating through her liver. Stage 4 by the time they'd caught it. The oncologist had said chemotherapy might buy her 6 more months, maybe a year. Cost $120,000. Elena had been 22, working 2 jobs, caring for her younger siblings. She'd tried. God, she'd tried. Applied for every charity, every payment plan, every possible option, but it hadn't been enough. Her mother died 4 months later in the same bedroom where Elena had been born, whispering apologies that she was leaving her children behind. Her father, Roberto Martinez, construction worker, strong, proud, hardworking. He'd taken a job with Blackwell Industries 3 years ago, part of a crew building a new luxury hotel in Brooklyn. Good pay, union benefits. He'd been so excited, talking about finally getting ahead, maybe saving enough to send Miguel to a special school for his autism. Then one day, he simply didn't come home. The police said he'd probably just left. Men did that sometimes, they said. Abandoned their families when the pressure got too much. But Elena knew her father. He would never leave. Never. The case went cold. No body, no evidence. Just gone, like he'd never existed at all. Her older sister, Maria, 25 when she got pregnant. The father had run the moment he found out. Maria tried to carry the baby to term alone, working until her water broke at a grocery store checkout line. But something went wrong during delivery. Too much bleeding. By the time the doctors stabilized her, it was too late. Maria died holding her newborn daughter, baby Rosa. 5 pounds, 3 ounces, perfect and screaming and motherless. So Elena took Rosa. Of course she did. Along with Miguel, 15 years old and so deep into his autism that he couldn't speak, couldn't handle loud noises or bright lights, needed constant supervision. And Sophia, 12, born with a clubfoot that had never been properly corrected because there was no money for the surgeries. She walked with a heavy limp, endured constant pain, got bullied mercilessly at school. And Abuela Carmen, 75 years old, Alzheimer's disease, advanced stage. Some days she thought Elena was Maria. Some days she asked where Roberto was. When was he coming home? Some days she didn't recognize anyone at all and screamed at the strangers in her house. 4 people depending on Elena. 4 people who would have nothing if she failed. The hospital bill from her mother's final months, $180,000. Elena paid $50 a month. At that rate, she'd be paying it off for 300 years. 3 jobs. Waitress at the Sterling Rose from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. housekeeper at the Riverside Hotel from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., food delivery driver from 8 p.m. to midnight, sleep from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., then start again. It still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Elena's phone buzzed in the plastic bag containing her personal effects. A nurse handed it to her. One new message. Derek, you're fired. You assaulted and embarrassed a VIP guest. Don't bother coming back. We'll mail your final check. Elena stared at the message. No surprise, no anger, just a hollow, empty feeling spreading through her chest. Her main job, gone. The job that paid the most and covered the morning shift so she could work the other two. Gone. She heard crying from the waiting room. Miguel's voice, high-pitched and panicked. The sound he made when his routine was disrupted, when he didn't understand what was happening. Sophia trying to calm him down, her own voice thick with tears. A nurse had called them. They'd taken the subway from Brooklyn, 2 kids alone in the city. Miguel rocking back and forth, hands over his ears. Sophia limping beside him, terrified. Elena closed her eyes. $45,000 for surgery, no insurance, no job, $180,000 already owed, 3 children and a grandmother depending on her. And now, permanently scarred, probably unable to work any job that required face-to-face customer service. For the first time in her 28 years, Elena Martinez understood why people gave up, why they looked at the impossible mountain in front of them and simply stopped climbing. It would be easier, so much easier. Miguel and Sophia would go to foster care. Maybe they'd find families who could actually help them. Rosa was young enough that she might not even remember. Abuela probably wouldn't understand anyway. They'd be better off without her. Elena's hand moved almost without conscious thought, reaching into the plastic bag for her uniform jacket. Her fingers found the white envelope, heavy with cash she didn't feel she deserved. And beneath it, the business card, plain white, a single phone number. If you need anything. Elena's hand trembled as she picked up her phone. She stared at the card for a long moment. This stranger had already given her $10,000. She had no right to ask for more, no right to drag him into her disaster of a life. But Miguel was crying in the waiting room. Sophia's foot would never get fixed without help. Rosa needed food and clothes and a safe place to grow up. Abuela needed medication and care. Elena dialed the number. It rang once, twice, then a voice, deep and calm. I was wondering when you'd call. Damien Wolfe arrived at Bellevue Hospital at 2:17 in the morning, 32 minutes after Elena's call. He walked through the emergency room entrance like he owned the building, his charcoal suit still immaculate despite the late hour. Security guards at the door straightened instinctively, something in his presence making them step aside without question. He found Elena's room on the 3rd floor. The nurse tried to stop him. Visiting hours were long over, but one look at his face and she simply pointed down the hallway. Room 312. Damien pushed open the door quietly. Elena lay in the hospital bed, her left side heavily bandaged. The burns had been cleaned and dressed, but even through the gauze, he could see how severe the damage was. Her face was pale, drawn with pain despite the morphine drip. Her eyes were closed, but tears leaked from beneath her lashes. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching, not speaking. In the dim light from the hallway, the scar on his jaw seemed deeper, darker, a reminder of his own past, his own failures. Then he turned and walked back down the hallway. The billing office was on the 1st floor, closed at this hour. Damien found the night administrator's office, knocked once, and entered without waiting for permission. A tired-looking woman in her 50s looked up from her computer, startled. Sir, I'm sorry, but you can't just. Damien placed a black American Express Centurion card on her desk, the kind of card that had no spending limit, the kind that most people would never see in their lifetime. Elena Martinez, he said. 3rd floor, room 312. I want every medical bill paid in full, the surgery she needs, the hospital stay, medications, follow-up care, everything. The administrator stared at the card, then at him. Sir, do you understand the cost? The burn surgery alone is $45,000. With the hospital stay, medications, and aftercare, we're looking at close to. I don't care about the cost. Damien's voice was flat, final. Charge whatever is necessary. The woman's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the card. She ran it through the system. Her eyes widened when the payment went through without any authorization request. $90,000. Approved instantly. There's also a note in her file about an elderly patient, Carmen Martinez, the administrator said carefully. Her grandmother. She's currently in a shared room in the geriatric ward. Medicaid coverage, but the waiting list for a private room is 6 months long. Damien pulled out a checkbook. He wrote quickly, tore off the check, and handed it to her. $30,000. Private room, he said. Best care available. Whatever she needs. The administrator took the check with shaking hands. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Damien returned to Elena's room. She was awake now, staring at the ceiling. She didn't turn her head when he entered, but her body tensed. She knew someone was there. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Damien said quietly. Best burn specialist in New York. Everything's been paid for. Elena's head turned slowly. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying. I heard, she whispered. A nurse just came in. She said someone paid $90,000. She thought it was a mistake. Damien reached into his jacket and withdrew another envelope. Thicker than the first, he placed it on the table beside her bed. $20,000, he said. For your family. For the next few months while you recover. Elena stared at the envelope. Then at him. Her face crumpled, and she began to cry. Not quiet tears. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body and made her wince from the pain in her burns. Why? She choked out. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. What do you want from me? Damien pulled the chair from the corner and sat down. For a long moment, he didn't answer. He just looked at his hands, clasped together, resting on his knees. Hands that had done terrible things. Hands that had failed to protect the people who mattered most. 3 years ago, he said finally, his voice low, I was the head of an organization called Wolfe. We controlled most of the underground operations on the East Coast. Drugs, weapons, protection. I was very good at what I did. Very wealthy. Very powerful. He paused. Elena had stopped crying, listening. I had a wife, Damien continued. Isabel. She was a teacher, kind, patient, everything I wasn't, and we had a daughter. Lily, 6 years old. She loved butterflies and ice cream and terrible knock-knock jokes. Elena's breath caught. The past tense. A rival organization wanted to send me a message, Damien said. His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes had gone very far away. They planted a bomb under Isabel's car. She was taking Lily to school. 7:43 in the morning. I was in a meeting. I heard the explosion from 3 blocks away. The room was completely silent except for the steady beep of Elena's heart monitor. By the time I got there was nothing left but burning metal and... He stopped, breathed. They died instantly. That's what the police said. They didn't suffer. As if that makes it better. I'm so sorry, Elena whispered. I killed everyone responsible, Damien said simply. Every single person involved. It took me 4 months. Then I walked away, left the organization to my second-in-command. I haven't been back since. He finally looked at Elena, really looked at her. I couldn't save them, he said. The people I loved most in this world. I had all the money, all the power, all the resources anyone could want, and I couldn't save them. So now, when I see someone who needs help, someone being hurt by people who think they're untouchable, he trailed off. I'm not saving you because I'm a good person. I'm saving you because I need to prove to myself that I can still save someone, that I'm not completely worthless. Elena reached out with her good hand. Her fingers found his. She squeezed gently. You're not worthless, she said softly. You saved me today. You're saving me now. Damien looked down at their joined hands. There's something else, he said. You mentioned your father, Roberto Martinez, missing 3 years. Elena's grip tightened. He was working for Blackwell Industries, construction crew. Then one day he just vanished. Police said he probably abandoned us. But I know he wouldn't. I know it. Damien was quiet for a moment. His eyes had taken on a sharp, focused quality, the look of a predator catching a scent. I'll look into it, he said. I still have contacts, people who owe me favors. If there's something to find, I'll find it. Hope flared in Elena's eyes, bright and painful. Really? You'd do that? I would. He stood up, gently extracting his hand from hers. But Elena, you need to understand something. Victoria Blackwell is not going to forget what happened today. Her son was humiliated in public. She'll want revenge. She'll come after you. Fear replaced hope. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any way to protect my family. You do now. Damien walked to the door, opened it. 2 men in dark suits stood in the hallway, both well over 6 feet tall, both with the kind of build that came from years of serious training, both with the watchful, alert eyes of people who knew how to spot danger. This is Mason and Cole, Damien said. They'll be here 24/7. No one gets near you or your family without going through them first. Elena looked at the two men, then back at Damien. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I offered. He adjusted his cufflinks, a habitual gesture. Get the surgery. Recover. Take care of your family. I'll handle the rest. He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. One more thing, he said without turning around. That manager who fired you, Derek, he's been let go, effective immediately. Turns out the Sterling Rose has new investors as of this afternoon, and the new management doesn't appreciate employees who abandon injured workers. Elena's mouth fell open. You bought the restaurant? I bought the company that owns the restaurant. Damien glanced back over his shoulder. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Money is useful for something, I suppose. Then he was gone, footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor. Elena lay back against her pillows, staring at the envelope on her bedside table. $120,000 paid in medical bills, $20,000 in cash for her family, 2 bodyguards standing watch, and a promise to find out what happened to her father, from a stranger who had watched her get burned and decided she was worth saving. Elena pressed her good hand against her mouth and cried again. But this time, for the first time in 3 years, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of hope. Victoria Blackwell's office occupied the entire 50th floor of Blackwell Tower in Midtown Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that made most visitors dizzy with vertigo and awe. The furniture was Italian leather and Brazilian rosewood. The art on the walls was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Everything in this space whispered power, control, dominance. Victoria stood at those windows now, iPad in hand, watching the video for the 5th time. Her son, Marcus, being humiliated in front of 50 people, his nose breaking, blood pouring across white marble, him crying like a child on the hosta floor of their own restaurant. The video had already been viewed 2.3 million times, shared across every social media platform, comments flooding in, most of them celebrating Marcus's pain, calling it karma, calling it justice. Her grip tightened on the iPad. Then, in one smooth motion, she hurled it across the room. It hit the far wall and exploded into fragments of glass and metal. Get him up here, she said to her assistant. Her voice was ice. Now. 20 minutes later, Marcus shuffled into her office. His nose was taped and bandaged, packed with gauze. Both eyes had purpled into spectacular shiners. He walked hunched over, like an old man, every movement clearly painful. Mom, The slap came so fast Marcus didn't see it coming. Victoria's palm cracked across his cheek with enough force to snap his head sideways. He stumbled, caught himself on a chair, stared at his mother with shock and fear. You made this family a laughingstock, Victoria said. Her tone was conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. Do you understand that? The Blackwell name has been dragged through the gutter because you couldn't control yourself for 5 minutes. But I didn't do anything wrong. Marcus's voice came out nasal and whiny through his broken nose. That bitch spilled water on my I don't care about the waitress. Victoria's eyes were flat, reptilian. I don't care that you burned her. I don't care that you posted it online. What I care about is that you let some random stranger walk into our establishment, break your nose in front of witnesses, and walk out without consequences. You made us look weak, Marcus. Weak. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. Blood from his nose had started seeping through the bandages. Victoria turned away from him, pressed a button on her desk. Harrison, get in here. The door opened immediately. Harrison Webb, head of Blackwell Industries' security division, entered. Ex-military, 48 years old, built like a bulldog. He'd worked for the Blackwell family for 15 years and had buried more problems than Victoria could count. The man from the restaurant, Victoria said. I want everything. Who he is, where he lives, who he cares about. I want his entire life mapped out in front of me by morning. Already done, ma'am. Harrison pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen. His name is Damien Wolfe, 37 years old. Until 2 years ago, he was the head of the Wolfe Organization, one of the largest criminal enterprises on the East Coast. Drugs, weapons, money laundering, revenue estimated at $50 million annually. Victoria's eyebrow raised slightly. He walked away 2 years ago after his wife and daughter were killed. Car bomb planted by a rival organization. He eliminated everyone responsible, then handed control to his lieutenant and disappeared. Disappeared, Victoria repeated. But not dead. No, ma'am. He's living under his real name, investing in legitimate businesses, real estate, security consulting, a few restaurants. But he still has connections. We estimate 50 to 60 former associates who would answer his call without question. Trained killers, most of them. Marcus made a strangled sound. 50? He has 50 people? Harrison ignored him, kept his eyes on Victoria. In the underworld, he's known as the Wolf. His reputation is significant. Very few people have crossed him and lived to talk about it. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Everyone has weaknesses, she said. Find his. There is one potential vulnerability, Harrison said carefully. This morning, he paid all medical expenses for the waitress Marcus burned, Elena Martinez. He also paid to upgrade her grandmother's hospital room and provided significant cash. He's taken a personal interest in this woman. How much cash? We're estimating at least 20,000, possibly more. Victoria's smile widened. So he has a hero complex. He wants to save the poor little waitress he couldn't save his own family. How touching. She walked back to her desk, sat down, steepled her fingers beneath her chin. The waitress has family? She asked. Harrison consulted his tablet. 3 younger siblings. Miguel Martinez, 15, severely autistic. Sofia Martinez, 12, disabled. Rosa Martinez, 5 years old. The waitress is their legal guardian. They live in a basement apartment in Brooklyn. No father, no mother. She's all they have. Good. Victoria's voice was soft, almost gentle, the way a snake might sound if snakes could speak. I want the Martinez family erased. The waitress, the siblings, the grandmother in the hospital. All of them. Make it look like an accident if possible. If not, I don't care. Just make them disappear. Mom. Marcus straightened up, wincing. Some part of him, some last shred of humanity, rebelled against this. She's just a waitress. Her family didn't do anything. Can't we just... Shut up. Victoria didn't even look at him. You created this problem. Now I'm fixing it. Unless you'd prefer I let Damien Wolfe come after you personally? Marcus went pale beneath his bruises. He shook his head. That's what I thought. Victoria turned back to Harrison. And I want surveillance on Wolfe. Where he goes, who he meets. If he has anyone else he cares about, I want to know. Already in place, ma'am. Excellent. She waved her hand dismissively. That will be all. Harrison left. Marcus started to follow, but Victoria's voice stopped him. Where do you think you're going? Marcus turned back. I thought you wanted me to leave. You want to make up for embarrassing this family? Victoria's eyes glittered. Then prove you're not completely useless. The waitress's siblings go to school in Brooklyn. Public school, no security, no protection. Take some men, bring them to me, alive. Something lit up in Marcus's eyes. The same cruelty that had made him pour scalding coffee on Elena. When, tonight, the boy has a routine. Walks home from his special needs program at 4:30. Takes his younger sister with him. They're vulnerable, easy targets. Marcus grinned, despite the pain in his face. I'll take care of it personally. See that you do. Victoria turned back to her windows, dismissing him. And Marcus, don't fail me again. That evening, Miguel and Sofia Martinez walked home from school like they did every day. Miguel's special needs program ended at 4:30. He'd meet Sofia at the corner, and they'd walk the 6 blocks to their apartment together. It was one of the few routines Miguel could handle without Elena present. Miguel walked with his headphones on, listening to the same song on repeat. It helped him stay calm. Sofia limped beside him, her backpack heavy on her small shoulders, favoring her right leg. They were 2 blocks from home when the black van pulled up alongside them. 4 men in dark clothing stepped out. They moved fast, professional. One grabbed Miguel from behind, hand over his mouth before he could scream. Miguel thrashed, the sudden touch sending him into a panic. He tried to bite, to kick, but the man was too strong. Sofia screamed, "Help! Someone help us!" A second man grabbed her, lifted her off the ground. She kicked at him, her small fists pounding against his chest. "Let go! Let go of my brother!" People on the street stopped, stared. A few pulled out phones, but no one intervened. No one stepped forward. In this neighborhood, in this city, getting involved meant trouble, meant danger, meant potentially ending up in a body bag. The men threw both children into the back of the van. The doors slammed shut. The van pulled away from the curb and disappeared into evening traffic. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. At 11:17 that night, Elena's phone buzzed. She was in her hospital bed, drowsy from pain medication, thinking about her upcoming surgery in the morning. Mason and Cole still stood guard outside her door. She picked up the phone. One new video message, unknown number. Her fingers trembled as she pressed play. The video was dark, grainy, shot on a phone. It showed the interior of what looked like a shipping container. Metal walls, no windows, a single bare bulb providing weak light. Miguel sat on the floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, rocking back and forth. His headphones were gone. He was making high-pitched keening sounds, the noise he made when he was terrified and overwhelmed. Tears and snot covered his face. Sophia sat beside him, also zip-tied. Her face was bruised, blood dried beneath her nose. She was crying, trying to press against her brother to comfort him, but her own terror made her whole body shake. "Miguel," she sobbed. "It's okay. It's okay. Elena will find us. She'll." Hand entered the frame, grabbed Sophia's hair, yanked her head back. She screamed. Then Marcus Blackwell's voice, distorted, coming through a speaker, but unmistakably his, that same entitled, mocking tone. "Hello, Elena. Remember me? I'm the guy whose nose you broke. Well, technically your boyfriend broke it, but same thing." The camera panned to show Marcus's face, the bandages, the black eyes. He was grinning. "Here's how this works," Marcus said. "You have 24 hours. You're going to walk up to the roof of Bellevue Hospital and throw yourself off. Post the video online so I know it's real. Do that. And these two little rats go free. Don't do it." He reached out, grabbed Miguel's face, squeezed hard. Miguel screamed, the sound piercing and raw. "Don't do it, and I'll kill them. Slowly. And I'll film that too. 24 hours, Elena. Your life for theirs. Seems like a fair trade, don't you think? After all, you're the one who started this. You should be the one to end it." Marcus laughed. That same ugly, entitled laugh. "Clock's ticking, poor girl. Better hurry. Oh, and don't bother calling the cops or your boyfriend. I see any police, any security, anyone coming near this location. I put a bullet in their heads immediately. This is between you and me, so choose. Die like the trash you are, or watch your family die instead." The video cut to black. Elena stared at the screen. Her phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the floor. Her heart monitor started beeping faster, 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 the sound of her pulse thundering in her ears. Outside her room, Mason and Cole reacted to the alarm, pushing through the door, but Elena didn't see them, didn't hear them. All she could see was Miguel's terrified face, Sophia's bruised cheek. All she could hear was their screams. 24 hours, her life, or theirs. Elena's hands shook so violently she could barely hold the phone. She tried to dial 3 times before she finally got the number right, the same number from the plain white business card, the number that had saved her once already. It rang twice before Damien answered. His voice was alert, awake despite the 3 a.m. hour. "Elena, they took them." The words came out as a strangled sob. "They took Miguel and Sophia. They're going to kill them unless her voice broke completely. Send me the video." Damien's voice had changed, gone cold, lethal. "Right now." Elena forwarded the message with trembling fingers. She could hear Damien breathing on the other end of the line, steady and controlled, then silence as he watched. "I'm coming to you," he said. "Don't do anything. Don't contact anyone else. Do you understand?" But the video said no police, no security. "If they see anyone, I know what it said." A pause. "Trust me, Elena." 20 minutes. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen in her hospital bed, staring at the dark screen of her phone. Mason and Cole were trying to talk to her, asking questions, but their voices sounded like they were coming from underwater. All she could see was Miguel's face, Sophia's blood. 24 hours. Damien arrived in 18 minutes. He swept into the room like a cold wind, Mason and Cole immediately stepping aside. He wore all black now, no suit jacket, just a black shirt and black pants. He looked like what he was, a predator preparing for a hunt. "Show me again," he said. Elena played the video. Damien watched without expression, but his eyes tracked every detail. The metal walls, the lighting, the sounds in the background. When Marcus's face appeared on screen, something flickered behind Damien's eyes, something ancient and terrible. "I'll bring them home," Damien said when the video ended. His voice was flat, absolute. "I promise you that." "But how?" Elena's voice cracked. "They said if they see anyone coming, they'll kill Miguel and Sophia immediately. They have 20 guards. Marcus said he's watching everything. How can you possibly, because I've done this before?" Damien pulled out his phone, started making calls. "The Blackwells think they're powerful. They think their money and their empire make them untouchable. But they're playing at being dangerous. I lived it for 20 years. He put the phone to his ear, Someone answered on the first ring. Axel, I need the team. All of them. Warehouse in Queens. 1 hour. He hung up, dialed again. Ivan, same message. Again. Mateo, bring your equipment. 15 calls, 15 names. Each one answered immediately. No questions asked. No hesitation. When Damien finished, he looked at Elena. Get dressed. You're coming with me. What? But the surgery can wait. He pulled her IV out carefully, pressed gauze over the injection site. Your family can't. By 4 a.m., they were in an abandoned warehouse in Queens. 15 men stood in the empty space, all dressed in dark clothing. Some Elena recognized from the hallway outside her hospital room. Others were strangers. But they all had the same look. Hard, capable, dangerous. A Hispanic man in his 30s set up a laptop on a makeshift table. This was Mateo. His fingers flew across the keyboard, screens filling with code and camera feeds. Talk to me, Damien said. Hacking Blackwell Industries' security network now, Mateo muttered. They've got decent firewalls, but nothing I can't crack. Give me 5 minutes. While Mateo worked, Damien spread a map of Brooklyn across another table. The other men gathered around. Elena stood at the edge, her bandaged shoulder throbbing, trying to understand what was happening. The video was shot inside a shipping container, Damien said. But there are thousands of containers in Brooklyn alone. Mateo will find them. When he does, we move fast. A tall, lean man with silver hair spoke up. This was Axel. What's the security situation? Unknown. But assume Victoria Blackwell has at least 20 men guarding the location. Probably more. They'll be expecting us. Good. Axel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Means we don't have to feel bad about what we do to them. Got it, Mateo called out. His screens now showed multiple camera angles of a warehouse at the Brooklyn docks. Red Hook Marine Terminal. Warehouse 12. I'm counting 18 hostiles outside. Probably more inside. And look. He zoomed in on one feed. Black van. Same plates as the vehicle that grabbed the kids from the school cameras. Damien studied the screens. Elena pushed forward to look. She could see the warehouse, the guards patrolling with weapons clearly visible, the containers stacked like building blocks. Somewhere in there, she whispered. Miguel and Sofia are somewhere in there. Not for long. Damien turned to face his team. Here's how this works. We have 2 objectives. Primary, extract the 2 children alive. Secondary, eliminate the threat so this never happens again. He pointed to the map. Axel, you take Team Alpha. 6 men. Position here, here, and here. Create a distraction on the east side. Draw as many guards as possible away from the main entrance. Axel nodded. Loud or quiet? Loud. I want them thinking they're under siege from that direction. Give us 5 minutes, then light it up. Team Bravo, even leads. Damien indicated a different approach route. 4 men, south entrance. Your job is finding and opening that container. Ivan, you're the best lockman on the East Coast. I'm counting on you. Ivan, a stocky Russian with scarred knuckles, grunted. 5 seconds or less. You have my word. Team Charlie, I'll lead. 4 men plus Elena. We go straight through the main entrance while they're distracted. Find the children. Secure them. Extract. One of the men spoke up. Boss, with respect, bringing a civilian is not negotiable. Damien's voice cut like steel. Those are her siblings. She's coming. Elena felt every eye turn to her. She straightened despite the pain, met their gazes. I won't slow you down. I promise. Damien walked to a long equipment case, flipped it open. Inside were weapons, handguns, rifles, ammunition, tactical vests. We go in 4 hours, he said. 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Hit them at the shift change when they're tired and sloppy. He pulled out a Glock, checked the magazine, handed it to Axel. Then another. And another. Mason, Cole, you stay here with Mateo. Monitor communications, police scanners, everything. If this goes bad, we need an early warning. What about police response time? Someone asked. Red Hook Marine Terminal is industrial. No residential nearby. Police response will be 8 to 10 minutes minimum. We'll be in and out in 5. Damien pulled out a smaller handgun, checked it, then held it out to Elena. She stared at it. I don't. I've never. You won't need to use it. His voice softened slightly. But if something happens to all of us, and you're alone with your siblings, you need to be able to protect them. Safety is here. Point and pull the trigger. Aim for center mass. Elena took the gun. It was heavier than she expected. Cold. Final. But Damien, she said quietly. Marcus said he's watching. If he sees us coming, he won't. Mateo spun his laptop around. The screen showed multiple camera feeds, all now displaying looped footage from an hour earlier. Guards standing still. Empty spaces. I'm feeding them fake video. They'll see what I want them to see, which is nothing. Damien pulled on a tactical vest, checked his own weapon, a larger handgun, black and lethal looking. Everyone clear on objectives? Questions? Silence. These men knew what they were doing. They'd done it before. Elena looked around at their faces. 15 trained killers preparing to walk into a heavily guarded compound to save 2 children they'd never met. Doing it because Damien Wolfe had asked them to. Because they owed him. Because, despite everything they'd done in their lives, they still understood what was worth fighting for. Why? She asked quietly. Why are all of you helping me? Axel was the one who answered. He was checking his rifle, not looking at her. Because the wolf doesn't ask for help unless it matters. And when it matters, we answer. Another man, younger, adding magazines to his vest. You saved his life once, back in the old days. We don't forget debts. And besides, Ivan said, his Russian accent thick, I have daughter, same age as your little one. If someone took her. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Damien walked over to Elena, adjusted the tactical vest he'd put on her. It was too big, but it would protect her vital organs. You stay behind me at all times. You do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. Understood? Elena nodded. What if something goes wrong? What if they kill you first? And I'm alone with that. Won't happen. Damien's eyes met hers. Behind the coldness, she saw something else. Determination. I've lost enough people I cared about. I'm not losing anyone else. Not today. He turned back to the team, checked his watch. 4 hours until we move. Get some rest. Check your equipment. Make your peace with whatever gods you believe in. The men dispersed to different corners of the warehouse. Some lay down to sleep. Others cleaned weapons with practiced efficiency. Mateo stayed at his laptop, monitoring the feeds. Damien walked to the warehouse window, staring out at the dark Queen skyline. Elena followed, stood beside him. Thank you, she said softly. For this, for everything. Thank me when your siblings are safe. His reflection in the window was hard, unyielding. Victoria Blackwell made a mistake tonight. She thought she could hurt you to hurt me. She thought fear would make us back down. But all she did was show me exactly what kind of monster she is. What happens after? Elena asked. After we get Miguel and Sofia back? Victoria won't just forget this. No. Damien's hand rested on the windowsill, fingers drumming once. She won't, which is why, after tonight, there won't be a Victoria Blackwell to remember anything. Elena shivered. Not from fear. From the absolute certainty in his voice. The promise of a man who had toppled empires before and would do it again. 6 hours, Damien said. In 6 hours, Victoria Blackwell will learn what every criminal eventually learns. That money and power mean nothing against someone with nothing left to lose. He turned to face her. Get some rest. You'll need your strength. Elena nodded, but she knew she wouldn't sleep. How could she? Somewhere in Brooklyn, Miguel was rocking back and forth in the dark. Sofia was crying, waiting for rescue, waiting for their sister to save them, and in 6 hours, Elena would walk into hell itself to bring them home. 4 a.m. Red Hook Marine Terminal sat dark and silent against the Brooklyn waterfront. Massive shipping containers stacked like children's blocks, creating corridors of shadow and steel. Warehouse 12 squatted at the far end, light spilling from windows 30 feet up. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their cigarette tips glowing in the darkness like fireflies. 22 men total. Mateo had counted them through the hacked security feeds. 18 outside, 4 inside with the containers. All armed, all employed by Blackwell Industries to do the kind of work that never appeared on official payroll records. Damien's team moved through the shadows like ghosts. They'd left their vehicles half a mile back, approaching on foot through abandoned rail yards and rusted equipment. No lights, no sound, just dark figures flowing through darker spaces. Damien held up his fist. Everyone stopped. He pointed to Axel, then east. Team Alpha split off, 6 men disappearing into the maze of containers. He pointed to Ivan, then south. Team Bravo went left, moving toward the rear entrance. Elena crouched beside Damien, her tactical vest heavy on her shoulders, the unfamiliar weight of the handgun pressed against her hip. Her hands were shaking. Her shoulder burned where the burns pulled against the bandages. But none of that mattered. Miguel and Sofia were inside that warehouse. Nothing else existed. Damien's radio crackled softly in his ear. Axel's voice, barely a whisper. Alpha in position. Bravo in position, came Ivan's rumble. Charlie ready, Damien responded. He looked at Elena, his wolf-gray eyes catching what little light existed. Stay behind me, always. Understood? She nodded. 3 minutes, Damien said into his radio. Mark, they waited. The longest 3 minutes of Elena's life. She counted her heartbeats. 214 before Damien's radio crackled again. Alpha execute. The eastern side of the warehouse erupted in fire and noise. The explosion lit up the night sky, a rolling ball of orange flame that sent a shipping container tumbling onto its side with a metallic crash that echoed across the waterfront. Axel's team opened fire immediately, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. The guards reacted exactly as Damien predicted. 15 of them sprinted toward the east side, weapons raised, shouting into radios. Chaos and confusion. The Blackwell security team thought they were under attack by an army. Move, Damien whispered. Team Charlie ran, not toward the fight, but away from it. West entrance, now guarded by only 3 men who were staring toward the explosions, trying to understand what was happening. Damien took the first guard with a suppressed shot to the chest. The man dropped without a sound. The second guard turned, mouth opening to shout, and one of Damien's men put 2 rounds through his throat. The third reached for his radio. Elena watched Damien move, impossibly fast, closing the distance and breaking the man's neck with his bare hands. All 3 down in less than 5 seconds. Ivan, you're clear. Go. Team Bravo emerged from the south, rushing toward the line of shipping containers behind the warehouse. 30 containers arranged in neat rows, each one padlocked shut. Ivan pulled a small device from his vest, something electronic with wires and a screen. He pressed it against the first lock. Nothing. Second lock. Third. Fourth. Come on, Ivan muttered, his accent thickening. Where are you, little ones? 8th container. The device beeped. Ivan's eyes lit up. Here. He pulled a different tool, something that looked like a modified drill. It whirred softly, biting into the padlock. 20 seconds. 25. The lock fell away. Ivan yanked the container door open. The smell hit them first. Unwashed bodies, human waste, fear, then the sight. Not just Miguel and Sofia, though they were there, zip-tied and terrified against the far wall, but 30 other people. Men, women, teenagers, all bound, all gagged, all with the hollow-eyed look of people who had given up hope. Immigrants, undocumented workers, the kind of people who could disappear and no one would ask questions. Victoria Blackwell's secret workforce, her modern-day slaves. Oh my God, Elena whispered. She pushed past Damien, running into the container. Miguel, Sofia. Miguel was making that high-pitched keening sound, rocking violently. When he saw Elena, the sound became a wail. Sofia was sobbing, blood crusted on her face from a split lip. Elena dropped to her knees, pulling them both against her with her good arm. I'm here. I'm here. You're safe now. Damien stood at the container entrance, his expression carved from stone. He spoke into his radio. We've got multiple hostages, not just the children. We need transport for 35 people. 35? Mateo's voice crackled back. Boss, that's I don't care what it takes. Nobody gets left behind. Nobody. His team was already moving, cutting zip ties, removing gags. The hostages stared at them with disbelief and terror. One woman, maybe 40, Hispanic, whispered something in Spanish. Elena caught enough to understand. Are you police? Better, one of Damien's men said gently. We're ghosts. Come on, let's get you out of here. Gunfire erupted outside. Not the controlled fire from Axel's diversion. This was closer, more desperate. The remaining guards had realized the eastern attack was a feint. Contact west side, someone shouted over the radio. We've got 4 tangos moving on your position. Hold them off, Damien ordered. He turned to Ivan. Get these people to the extraction point. Now. What about you? Finishing this. Damien's eyes had gone flat. Empty. The look of the wolf, not the man. There's someone here I need to talk to. He looked at Elena. Stay with your family. My men will protect you. No. Elena stood up, even as Miguel clung to her. I'm coming with you. Elena, he terrorized my family. I need to see this. Her voice was steel wrapped in flesh. I need to watch him face what he's done. Damien studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once. Ivan, take the hostages and Elena's siblings. Elena comes with me. Gunfire outside intensified. Axel's voice, calm despite the chaos. We've got them pinned, but they're calling for backup. You've got maybe 3 minutes before this place is swarming. Damien and Elena moved deeper into the warehouse, past the containers, past the makeshift guard station with its monitors showing Mateo's fake feeds, toward a smaller container at the far end, set apart from the others. Light spilled from its open door, Marcus Blackwell's command center. They could hear him inside, shouting into a phone. "Where the fuck is everyone? We're under attack. Get more men here now." Damien kicked the door. It flew inward, banging against the container wall. Marcus spun around. His nose was still bandaged from their first encounter. He held a gun in one shaking hand. When he saw Damien, his face went from pale to gray. "You," Marcus whispered. "How did you—" He fired. Wild, panicked. The bullet went wide by 3 feet, punching through the container wall. Damien crossed the space in 2 strides. He grabbed Marcus's wrist, twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. Then Damien's fist drove into Marcus's already broken nose. Marcus screamed and crumpled. Damien caught him by the throat, slammed him against the container wall, held him there. Marcus's feet dangled inches off the ground. "You like hurting people weaker than you," Damien said softly. "Let's see how you like it when someone fights back." He drove his knee into Marcus's stomach. Once, twice. Marcus vomited, the sound wet and desperate. Elena stood in the doorway, watching. She should have felt satisfaction, revenge, but all she felt was hollow. This man had tortured her siblings, had burned her, had destroyed lives, and he was nothing, just a coward crying and begging when confronted with real violence. "Please," Marcus wheezed. "I'll give you money, whatever you want. My mother will pay. Your mother is next," Damien said. He dropped Marcus, who collapsed into his own vomit. "But first, you're going to tell me everything." He grabbed Marcus by the hair, dragged him to a desk covered in paperwork, files, documents, a laptop showing spreadsheets. "What is all this?" Damien demanded. Marcus was crying now, shoulders shaking. "The operation, my mother's operation. She brings in illegals, promises them work. Then we take their papers, lock them up. They work in our hotels, our restaurants. No pay, no freedom." Damien pulled files at random. Names, photos, dates. His face darkened with each page. "How many?" "I don't know. 200? 300 people." Damien's voice could have frozen blood. "You enslaved 300 human beings." Elena was looking through the files too. Her hands moved mechanically, flipping pages, seeing faces. People who had come to America for a better life and found only chains. Then she saw it. A file marked terminations. Her hands went numb. She opened it. The first page showed a man. Dark hair, kind eyes, working clothes. The name underneath, Roberto Martinez. Date, June 2021. Status, eliminated. Reason, discovered holding facility during construction. Liability removed. Beneath that, a photo. Not of her father alive. Of his body, broken, covered in concrete dust, being lowered into a hole in the ground. A construction site in the background. Workers pouring concrete over him, burying him in the foundation of what would become a Blackwell Industries luxury hotel. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The file slipped from her numb fingers. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She saw more photos. Her father's face, his work ID, a report detailing how he'd found the hidden basement where Blackwell Industries kept their slave labor, how he'd tried to call the police, how Marcus's head of security had stopped him, how they'd killed him, disposed of him, erased him like he'd never existed. "Daddy," Elena heard herself say, like a child, like she was 5 years old again, calling for him to come home from work. "Daddy, no, please, no." Her legs gave out. She would have hit the floor, but Damien caught her, one arm wrapping around her waist. He pulled the file up with his free hand, looked at the photos. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes went very, very cold. "You killed her father," he said to Marcus. It wasn't a question. Marcus was shaking his head frantically. "That wasn't me. That was Harrison, my mother's security chief. I didn't know until later. I swear." "But you knew." Damien's voice was soft, deadly. "You knew her father was buried in your foundation. You knew she was working in your restaurant. And you still poured coffee on her. You still terrorized her family." Elena was sobbing now, her body shaking with grief 3 years denied. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He'd been murdered, buried like trash, left to rot in concrete while his family searched and waited and hoped, and the people responsible had made her serve them food, had made her smile and say, "Yes, sir, and would you like anything else?" while her father's bones lay entombed beneath their luxury hotel. "I'm sorry," Marcus was babbling. I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything. I'll testify against my mother. Just please don't kill me. Please." Damien looked at Elena. "He's yours if you want him." Elena looked at Marcus Blackwell, cowering, crying, pathetic, the man who had burned her, who had kidnapped her siblings, whose family had murdered her father. She thought about the gun on her hip, how easy it would be to pull it out, to put a bullet in his head, to make him pay. But then she thought about Miguel and Sofia, waiting for her outside, needing her to be their sister, not a murderer. "No," she whispered. "I want him to live. I want him to go to prison. I want everyone to know what the Blackwells are, what they've done." Damien nodded once. "Then that's what happens." He pulled out his phone, took photos of every document in the terminations file, the evidence of Roberto Martinez's murder, of 300 enslaved people, of an empire built on bones and suffering. "Axel, we're done here," he said into his radio. "Pull back. We've got what we need." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Police, fire department. Someone had finally called it in. Damien hauled Marcus to his feet. "You're going to walk out of here with us. You're going to get in our vehicle. And you're going to tell the FBI everything. Or I'll hand you back to those 30 people you kept in a cage and let them decide what happens to you." Marcus nodded frantically. They walked out of the container. The warehouse was empty now. Axel's team had vanished like smoke. The fires were burning out. Bodies of Blackwell security littered the ground. And at the extraction point, Elena's siblings waited. Miguel was calm now, headphones back on, rocking gently. Sofia stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder. When they saw Elena, both children ran forward. Elena knelt down, pulled them both into her arms, and finally let herself break. Her father was dead, had been dead for 3 years. But his children were alive, and she would make damn sure the people who killed him paid for every second of her family's suffering. The safe house was a nondescript building in Queens, 3 stories of faded brick that looked like every other building on the block. Damien's team had brought everyone here. The 30 freed hostages, Miguel, Sofia, and baby Rosa, who Mason had picked up from a neighbor. Marcus Blackwell, zip-tied to a chair in the basement. And Elena. Elena sat on a couch in the second-floor apartment, the terminations file still clutched in her hands. She hadn't let go of it since the warehouse. Her eyes were fixed on her father's photo, Roberto Martinez, smiling in his work ID picture. He'd been so proud of that job. Union wages, benefits, a chance to get ahead. Miguel sat beside her, headphones on, rocking gently. Sofia had fallen asleep with her head on Elena's lap, exhausted from terror and relief. But Elena couldn't sleep, couldn't move, could barely breathe past the crushing weight of grief and rage. Damien entered the room quietly. He'd cleaned up, changed into fresh clothes. But there was still blood on his knuckles. Not his blood. He carried 2 mugs of coffee, set one on the table beside Elena. She didn't acknowledge it, didn't look up, just stared at her father's face. Damien sat down in the chair across from her, waited. He understood grief, understood the way it hollowed you out from the inside, left you empty and raw. "He didn't leave us," Elena finally whispered. Her voice was hoarse from crying. 3 years. 3 years I told Miguel and Sofia that maybe Daddy would come home, that maybe he was just lost, that maybe. She choked on the words. I lied to them. I lied to myself. And he was dead the whole time, buried like garbage. "I'm sorry," Damien said quietly. Elena's head snapped up. "You're sorry? You knew. How long have you known?" "Since I started investigating Victoria Blackwell after the restaurant incident. 4 days ago. 4 days. Elena's voice was shaking. "You knew for 4 days and you didn't tell me. You let me hope. You let me think he might still be out there somewhere." "I didn't have proof," Damien said. "I found references in encrypted files, mentions of a construction worker named Roberto Martinez who'd been dealt with, but no hard evidence, no body, no photographs. I couldn't tell you your father was dead, based on encrypted fragments that might have meant anything. But you suspected." "Yes, I suspected." Elena's hand moved before she thought about it. The slap cracked across Damien's face hard enough to snap his head sideways. Her palm stung. His cheek immediately reddened with the imprint of her fingers. Damien didn't move, didn't raise a hand to touch his face. Just sat there, accepting it. "You said you were trying to save me," Elena's voice broke. "You said you wanted to make up for not saving your family. But you were just using me, using my pain to make yourself feel better. And all along you knew. You knew what happened to my father and you didn't tell me." "You're right," Damien said simply. Elena waited for more. An excuse. A justification. Something. But Damien just looked at her with those wolf-gray eyes and said again, "You're right. I should have told you. Even without proof. Even if it hurt. You deserve to know. Why didn't you?" "Because I'm a coward." The words came out flat. A statement of fact. I've killed 53 people in my life. I've destroyed organizations and empires. But I couldn't look you in the eye and tell you your father was dead. I couldn't watch you break. So I told myself I was protecting you, that I was waiting for evidence. But really, I was just protecting myself from having to watch someone else lose everything. Elena stared at him, at this man who had saved her, who had stormed a warehouse and freed 30 people and brought her siblings home alive. This man who had lost his own wife and daughter and was trying desperately to fix a world he couldn't fix. And he was right. He was a coward. But he was also the only person who had stood up for her when no one else would. "Tell me everything," she whispered. "Tell me exactly what happened to my father." Damien took a breath. "Your father was a construction worker. He took a job with Blackwell Industries 3 years ago. They were building a luxury hotel in Brooklyn, the Blackwell Metropolitan. It opened 2 years ago. 5-star rating. Rooms start at $800 a night." Elena's stomach turned. She knew that hotel. She'd cleaned rooms there during her second job, had walked through lobbies built on her father's grave. "The hotel has a basement level," Damien continued. "Storage, mechanical systems, employee areas. But it also has a hidden sub-basement, built during construction, not on any official plans. That's where Victoria Blackwell keeps her labor camp, 30 to 40 people at a time. Undocumented immigrants brought in with promises of real jobs. Instead, they're locked in that basement, forced to work in Blackwell hotels and restaurants. No pay, no freedom. If they try to escape, they're punished, beaten, sometimes killed." Elena's hands were shaking, and my father found it. He was part of the concrete crew. One day in June 2021, he was working on the foundation. A section of wall wasn't right. He went to check it, found the entrance to the hidden basement, saw what was inside. Damien pulled out his phone, showed Elena the photos he'd taken at the warehouse. Documents, reports, Victoria Blackwell's own handwriting on some pages. "Your father tried to do the right thing," Damien said. "He waited until his shift ended, went to his car, called the police. But Harrison Webb, Victoria's head of security, had already been notified. They were monitoring all the construction workers. Your father never made it home." Elena couldn't see the phone anymore. Her vision had blurred with tears. Harrison intercepted him in the parking lot, killed him, made it look like he'd simply disappeared. Then they took his body back to the construction site and buried him in the concrete foundation. Section 4, Sublevel 2. He's been there ever since, directly beneath the hotel's main elevator shaft. "Oh God." Elena pressed her hand to her mouth. "I worked there. I cleaned rooms right above where they buried him. I walked over his grave every day and I didn't know. You couldn't have known. But you knew!" Elena's voice rose, waking Sophia. The little girl stirred, sat up, looked around in confusion. Elena pulled her close, stroked her hair. "You knew and you didn't tell me." "I know." Damien's voice was steady. "And I was wrong. I'm sorry, Elena. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know sorry means nothing. But I am." Elena looked at Miguel, rocking beside her, at Sophia, rubbing sleep from her eyes, at the photo of her father, young and smiling and so proud of his new job that would get him killed. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "Really? Not the redemption story. Not the saving people thing. Why me?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw, more honest than she'd ever heard him. "Because when I saw Marcus Blackwell pour that coffee on you, I saw every person I'd ever failed. Every innocent who'd been hurt because I wasn't there, wasn't fast enough, wasn't good enough. And I saw a chance to maybe, for once, actually save someone before they lost everything." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I couldn't save Isabel. I couldn't save Lily. I've spent 2 years living with that, waking up every morning knowing that the people I loved most died because of who I was, what I did. And when I saw you lying on that floor, burned and hurt and alone, I thought, maybe I can save this one. Maybe I can stop the Blackwells before they destroy this family the way they destroy everyone else." "But you already knew they'd destroyed us," Elena said. "You knew they'd killed my father." "I suspected. I didn't know. And by the time I had proof, you'd already been through so much. I made a choice. I chose to focus on saving the people who were still alive. Your siblings, you, the 30 people in that container. I told myself I'd deal with the truth about your father after everyone was safe. You should have told me. Elena's voice was firm now. Not angry anymore, just tired. I deserved to know. Even if it hurt, even if there was no proof. I deserved the truth. You did. Damien met her eyes. You're right. And I failed you. Just like I failed my family. I'm sorry. Elena looked down at her father's photo again. Then, slowly, she closed the file, set it on the table, took the coffee Damien had brought and drank it. It was cold now, bitter, but it was something solid, something real. What happens now? She asked. Damien pulled out his phone. Now I call in a favor. He dialed a number. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. Professional. Clipped. Special Agent Sarah Chen. Sarah, it's Damien Wolfe. A pause. I wondered when I'd hear from you again. It's been 2 years. I have something for you. Human trafficking operation. 300 victims over 5 years. Murder. Evidence of everything. The whole empire. What empire? Blackwell Industries. Another pause. Longer this time. Victoria Blackwell? Are you serious? Dead serious. I have 30 rescued hostages who will testify. I have Marcus Blackwell in custody, willing to cooperate, and I have documents proving everything, including the murder of Roberto Martinez 3 years ago. Elena's breath caught at hearing her father's name. Where's the body? Agent Chen asked. Buried in the foundation of the Blackwell Metropolitan Hotel. Section 4, Sublevel 2, beneath the elevator shaft. You'll need ground-penetrating radar to confirm before you dig. Jesus Christ. Wolfe, you're talking about taking down one of the most powerful families on the East Coast. I'm talking about justice, Damien said. Are you in or not? Send me everything you have. And Wolfe? This better be real. Because if you're using me to settle a personal score, this is real. And it's personal. Roberto Martinez had 3 daughters and a grandson. They've spent 3 years not knowing what happened to their father. Now they do. And now Victoria Blackwell is going to pay for it. He hung up, looked at Elena. It's done, he said. By morning, the FBI will have everything. They'll raid the hotel. They'll find your father's remains. They'll arrest Victoria, Harrison, everyone involved. Your father will finally get justice. Elena nodded slowly. She felt empty, hollowed out, but also, strangely, lighter, like a weight she'd been carrying for 3 years had finally lifted. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Damien said. This isn't over. Victoria Blackwell is dangerous. Cornered animals always are. Until she's behind bars, your family is still in danger. Then we finish it. Elena stood up carefully, mindful of her burns and her sleeping siblings. Together, we finish this and make sure my father didn't die for nothing. Damien stood too. For a moment, they just looked at each other. 2 broken people trying to fix a broken world. Then Elena stepped forward and hugged him. Not gentle, hard, fierce. The embrace of someone holding on to the only solid thing in a storm. I'm still angry at you, she said into his shoulder. But I'm also grateful. Both things can be true. Damien's arms came up slowly, carefully, returning the embrace. Both things can be true, he agreed. Outside, dawn was beginning to break over Queens. In a few hours, the FBI would move. Victoria Blackwell's empire would begin to crumble, and somewhere beneath a luxury hotel, Roberto Martinez's body would finally be found. Justice was coming, slow, painful, but inevitable. Agent Sarah Chen received Damien's files at 5:37 a.m. By 6:15, she had a federal judge signing warrants. By 7 a.m., 50 FBI agents were mobilizing across New York City. SWAT teams, forensic specialists, victim advocates. The largest coordinated raid the Bureau had conducted in 5 years. The 30 freed hostages had been processed through the night. Medical exams, witness statements, each one telling the same story. Promises of legal work, papers confiscated, imprisonment, forced labor, beatings. Some had been held for months, others for years. A woman named Rosa from Guatemala had been in that basement for 18 months. She wept when Agent Chen told her she was free, actually free, that the people who'd enslaved her were going to prison. By 7:45 a.m., ground-penetrating radar confirmed what Damien's documents claimed. There were human remains in the foundation of the Blackwell Metropolitan Hotel, Section 4, Sublevel 2, right where Roberto Martinez had been buried 3 years ago. A forensic team began the careful process of extracting the body from concrete that had been poured specifically to hide it forever. At 8 a.m. exactly, 50 federal agents stormed Blackwell Tower. They came through the main entrance and the service entrance and the parking garage simultaneously. Agents in tactical gear, weapons drawn, badges displayed. Building security tried to stop them at first, hands moving toward guns. But Agent Chen simply held up the warrant. Federal agents executing a lawful search and arrest warrant. Interfere and you'll be charged with obstruction. Stand down. They stood down. The agents flooded the building. 20 went to the basement servers to seize computer records. 15 secured the accounting department on floor 30. 10 went to the security office to confiscate surveillance footage. And Agent Chen, with 5 of her best people, took the elevator to the 50th floor. Victoria Blackwell's private domain. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area of obscene luxury. The receptionist, a young woman in designer clothes, stood up in alarm. "I'm sorry, but you can't just federal agents. Move aside." They pushed through the mahogany doors into Victoria's office. Victoria Blackwell stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, a crystal glass of whiskey in her hand despite the early hour. She wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than most people earned in 6 months. Her silver hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like exactly what she was, power personified. She didn't turn around when the agents entered, just continued staring out at the Manhattan skyline as if she owned every building she could see. In a way, she did. "Victoria Blackwell," Agent Chen said, "you're under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and racketeering." Victoria took a slow sip of her whiskey. Then, finally, she turned around. Her face was calm, almost amused. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to? A woman about to spend the rest of her life in federal prison?" Victoria smiled. It was the smile of a shark. "I have the best legal team on the East Coast. I have senators who owe me favors. I have judges in my pocket. By this time tomorrow, I'll be having lunch at Le Bernardin, while you're explaining to your superiors why you just committed career suicide. We have 30 witnesses who will testify against you," Agent Chen said. "We have financial records showing exactly how you moved money through shell corporations. We have the body of Roberto Martinez, who you murdered and buried in your hotel foundation. And we have your own son ready to tell us everything in exchange for a reduced sentence." For the first time, Victoria's smile faltered, just slightly. Marcus wouldn't dare. He already has. The office door opened again. Damien Wolfe walked in. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was an FBI operation, but Agent Chen owed him. And sometimes, justice required bending the rules. Victoria's eyes locked onto Damien. Recognition flashed across her face. Then calculation. Then, finally, understanding. "You," she said softly, "the man from the restaurant. I should have killed you when I had the chance." "You should have," Damien agreed. "But you made a mistake. You thought you could terrorize an innocent woman and her family to get to me. You thought fear would make us back down. Instead, all you did was show us exactly what kind of monster you are." "Monster?" Victoria laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. "I built an empire. I created jobs. I made this city what it is. Those people in my basement, they were nothing. Illegal trash who would have died in poverty anyway. I gave them purpose. I gave them work. You enslaved them," Damien said. His voice was ice. "You beat them. You killed Roberto Martinez because he tried to save them. And you did it all because you could. Because you thought your money made you untouchable." Victoria's hand tightened on her whiskey glass. "And who are you to judge me? The wolf. I know what you've done. How many people have you killed? How many lives have you destroyed? You think you're better than me? You're a hypocrite wearing a hero's mask." "I never said I was better than you," Damien replied. "I've done terrible things. I'll answer for them someday. But the difference between us is simple. I never pretended to be anything other than what I was. I never dressed up evil in expensive suits and called it business. And I never, ever hurt people who couldn't fight back." Agent Chen stepped forward. "Enough. Victoria Blackwell, turn around and put your hands behind your back." Victoria set down her whiskey glass. For a moment, she just stood there, looking out at her city one last time. Then she turned around, chin high, face composed. "This isn't over," she said as Agent Chen cuffed her. "I'll beat this. I always do." "No," Damien said quietly. "This time you won't." They led her out of the office, down the elevator, through the lobby where employees stood frozen in shock, watching their CEO being perp-walked by federal agents, out onto the street where news cameras were already gathering, drawn by reports of the raid. Victoria Blackwell, the most powerful woman on the East Coast, in handcuffs, being loaded into an FBI vehicle. The cameras captured everything. At the same time, in the basement of Blackwell Tower, agents were arresting Harrison Webb, Victoria's head of security, the man who had actually pulled the trigger on Roberto Martinez. He didn't go quietly. It took 4 agents to restrain him, and even then he was screaming threats about lawyers and consequences. And in a holding cell in Queens, Marcus Blackwell sat with his court-appointed attorney, signing page after page of statements, detailing everything, every crime, every victim, every dollar. He cried the entire time. Not from remorse, from fear. Fear of what would happen to him in prison, fear of his mother's wrath, fear of finally facing consequences for a lifetime of cruelty. 6 months later, the trial began. Federal Court, Southern District of New York, the largest courtroom they had, and it still wasn't big enough for everyone who wanted to watch. News cameras outside, protesters with signs, victims' families seeking closure, the whole world watching. The prosecution presented 97 witnesses over 3 weeks. 30 former slaves, financial experts, FBI agents, medical examiners who had identified Roberto Martinez's remains, each one telling a piece of the story, building a case so airtight that even Victoria's team of expensive lawyers couldn't find holes. Marcus testified against his mother. Sitting in the witness box, his face thinner, older, broken, he told the court everything. How Victoria had started the operation 10 years ago. How she'd refined it. How many people had disappeared into her basement over the years. How Roberto Martinez had been killed and buried. Victoria sat at the defense table throughout, her face carved from stone, never showing emotion, never breaking, even when her own son sold her out to save himself. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Victoria Blackwell, life in prison without possibility of parole. Harrison Webb, 25 years for manslaughter and conspiracy. Marcus Blackwell, 35 years for kidnapping, assault, sexual assault charges from 7 women who finally came forward, and his role in the trafficking operation. All assets of Blackwell Industries seized, liquidated, turned into a victims' compensation fund. Every penny Victoria had built her empire on would now go to the people she'd destroyed. Before sentencing, the judge allowed victim impact statements. Elena Martinez stood at the podium. Her burns had healed, leaving scars on her shoulder and neck that would never fully fade. But she stood straight, strong. Her siblings sat in the front row behind her. Miguel calm with his headphones. Sophia watching her sister with pride. Baby Rosa coloring in a notebook. Too young to understand, but there nonetheless. Elena's hands shook as she unfolded her statement, but her voice was steady. My father, Roberto Martinez, was a good man, she began. He worked hard. He loved his family. He did the right thing when he saw people suffering. And for that, you murdered him. You buried him like garbage. You left his children wondering for 3 years what happened to him, left us hoping he might come home. She looked directly at Victoria. But he's not coming home. He never will. Because you valued money more than human life, Orphet. You valued power more than basic decency, and you thought you'd get away with it forever. Elena's voice grew stronger, but you didn't. Today, 30 people are free because my father tried to save them. Today, justice has been served. My father didn't die for nothing. He died trying to do what was right, and his death brought down your entire empire. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. You took my father from me. You took 3 years of my life. You burned me. You terrorized my family. But you didn't break us. We're still here. We're still standing. And you're going to prison for the rest of your life. She folded her paper. The court has awarded my family $2.5 million in compensation. I'm going to use that money to continue my father's work, to help people like those you enslaved, to make sure no one else suffers the way we did. Elena looked at the judge. Thank you for giving my father justice, and thank you for making sure Victoria Blackwell can never hurt anyone again. She walked back to her seat. Damien sat in the row behind her family. As Elena passed, their eyes met. He nodded once. She nodded back. The judge brought down his gavel. Court is adjourned. Victoria Blackwell was led away in chains. She looked back once at Marcus, who couldn't meet her eyes. Then she was gone, disappeared into the federal prison system, into a small cell with no windows and no view. The woman who had owned half of Manhattan would spend the rest of her life staring at concrete walls. Outside the courthouse, Elena stood in the autumn sunlight with her siblings. News reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed, but Elena just held Miguel's hand and Sophia's hand and let the moment wash over her. Justice had come, late, painful, incomplete. Her father was still gone. The scars on her shoulder would never fully fade. 3 years of suffering could never be erased. But Victoria Blackwell would never hurt anyone again. And sometimes, that was enough. 1 year later, autumn sunlight filtered through the windows of a 3-bedroom apartment in Queens. Not fancy, not expensive, but clean, safe, home. Elena stood in the kitchen, making breakfast for her siblings. The burns on her shoulder and neck had healed into pale scars, visible above the collar of her shirt. She no longer tried to hide them. They were part of her story now, part of what had made her strong. The compensation money from the Blackwell settlement, $2.5 million, had changed everything. The first thing Elena did was pay off the $180,000 in medical debt that had hung over her family like a storm cloud for 3 years. She'd walked into the hospital billing office, written the check, and watched the clerk's face go pale with shock. This is paid in full," the woman had stammered. "Yes," Elena had said simply. "It is." Then she'd bought this apartment, 3 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a living room with space for Miguel to have his routines without feeling crowded, 1,200 square feet that might as well have been a palace compared to the moldy basement they'd lived in before. Miguel was doing better. The specialized autism treatment center in Manhattan cost $40,000 a year, but it was worth every penny. He was learning to communicate using a tablet. He could make eye contact now, sometimes, when he felt safe. He even had a friend at the center, another boy who loved the same songs Miguel did. They'd sit together, headphones on, rocking in sync, and Elena would watch with tears in her eyes because her brother was no longer alone. Sophia's clubfoot had been surgically corrected 6 months ago. The operation that should have happened when she was a baby, that would have happened if their mother had lived, if their father hadn't been murdered, if they'd had money and insurance and any kind of safety net. Sophia was in physical therapy 3 times a week now, learning to walk without pain. She still limped slightly, probably always would, but she'd started ballet classes last month. The teacher said she had beautiful lines. Sophia glowed with pride. Baby Rosa, not so much of a baby anymore, had started 1st grade. She was thriving, reading above her grade level, making friends, drawing pictures of families with a mother and father, and thinking that was just imagination, not knowing it was memory, not knowing her own mother had died giving birth to her. Elena would tell her someday, when she was older, when she could understand. Abuela Carmen had passed away 4 months ago, peacefully, in her sleep, in the comfortable private room that Damien had paid for. The Alzheimer's had been merciful in the end. She'd simply drifted off one afternoon and never woken up. At the funeral, Elena had stood between her grandmother's grave and the newly placed headstone for her father, brought from the cemetery where his remains had finally been properly buried, and felt a strange sense of completion. The 2 people who'd raised her, reunited at last. Elena had enrolled at City College, studying social work, night classes, while Sophia watched Miguel and Rosa. It would take her 4 years to finish her degree, but she had time now. She had money now. She had a future that didn't involve working herself to death just to keep everyone fed. But more than school, Elena had opened Martinez House. The building was in Brooklyn, not far from where the Blackwell Metropolitan Hotel had stood before it was demolished. The city had seized the property, bulldozed the building that contained her father's grave, and sold the land. Elena had used part of her settlement money to buy a different building, an old community center that had been abandoned for years. She'd renovated it completely, turned it into a sanctuary for people who'd been trafficked, exploited, or abused by those with power. Martinez House offered temporary housing, job training, legal assistance, mental health counseling, everything Elena wished had existed when her family was drowning. In the first year, Martinez House had helped 200 people. Immigrants who'd been enslaved like the 30 Elena had helped free from that container. Women escaping domestic violence. Men who'd been exploited by employers who stole their wages. People who had nowhere else to turn and no one else who would help. Rosa from Guatemala, the woman who'd been held in that basement for 18 months, now worked at Martinez House as a counselor. She understood what the clients were going through in a way no textbook could teach. She'd lived it, survived it, and now she was helping others survive too. Elena had hired 5 full-time staff members and 20 volunteers. They operated on donations, grants, and the interest from Elena's settlement money. Every penny went to helping people rebuild their lives. And Damien? Damien had kept his promise to walk away from his old life completely. He'd founded Wolfe Security Consulting, a legitimate company that provided security assessments and protection services to nonprofits, charities, and humanitarian organizations, the kind of groups that did important work in dangerous places but couldn't afford corporate security firms. Damien used his knowledge of how criminals thought to help protect those who were trying to make the world better. He donated $1 million to Martinez house, anonymous. But Elena knew. She'd recognized his handwriting on the note that came with the check. For Roberto, and for the future he wanted for his children. On a cool October afternoon, Elena stood at Cypress Hills Cemetery in Brooklyn. 2 graves, side by side. Roberto Martinez, Carmen Santos, father and grandmother. The 2 anchors of her childhood, now resting together. She placed flowers on each grave, white roses for her grandmother, sunflowers for her father, because he'd loved them. Footsteps on the grass behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew that walk, that presence. Damien Wolfe stood beside her, holding his own bouquet of flowers. He laid them on Roberto's grave without speaking. They stood in silence for a long moment. The autumn wind rustled through the cemetery trees. Leaves drifted down in shades of gold and red. "I think my father would thank you," Elena said quietly, "for everything you did, everything you're still doing." "I didn't do it for thanks," Damien replied. His voice was softer than it had been a year ago, less cold, more human. "I know." Elena looked at him. "But I'm thanking you anyway." Damien's eyes were on Roberto's headstone. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing not to kill Marcus when you had the chance? Choosing the legal system instead of revenge?" "Every day," Elena admitted. "I think about how easy it would have been, how satisfying. But then I come here and I remember what my father believed in. He believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard, even when it cost him everything. If I'd killed Marcus, I would have betrayed everything he stood for. Your father was a better person than I am." Elena turned to face Damien fully. "Do you regret your past? The things you did before we met?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. "Every single day," he finally said. "I regret every life I took, every person I hurt, every choice I made that led me down that path. But I can't change any of it. I can only try to live better now. Try to balance the scales, even though I know they'll never actually balance." "Maybe that's enough," Elena said softly. "Trying to be better, trying to do good. Maybe that's all any of us can do." She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, scarred from years of violence, but they closed gently around hers. "Live with me," Elena said. "Not romantically. Not right now. Maybe never. But live with us. Help me run Martinez house. Use everything you know about the dark side of this world to protect people from it. We can do more good together than apart." Damien looked at her. For the first time since she'd met him, she saw real hope in his eyes. Not the cold calculation of a predator, not the empty acceptance of someone who'd given up, but genuine, fragile hope. The hope of someone who'd spent 2 years in darkness and was finally seeing light. "I'd like that," he said. They stood together in the cemetery, hands joined, as the sun began to set over Brooklyn. 2 broken people, trying to build something whole, trying to honor the dead by protecting the living. Elena's voice, quiet but strong. "Justice may come late, but it always comes. My father didn't die in vain. 30 people walked free because he tried to save them. 300 more were freed when his death brought down the Blackwell empire. And now, every person we help at Martinez house is a continuation of his legacy." She looked up at the sky, where the first stars were appearing. "Real strength isn't measured by how much money you have or how much power you control. It's measured by what you do with that power, whether you use it to protect others or destroy them. My father had no money and no power, but he had courage, and in the end, that courage changed everything." Damien squeezed her hand gently. "He'd be proud of you." "I hope so," Elena whispered. "I really hope so." They walked out of the cemetery together as darkness fell. Behind them, Roberto Martinez's grave stood quiet under the stars. A good man who tried to do the right thing, who died for it, but whose death had not been in vain. Because sometimes, when the good die young, their legacy lives on in those they leave behind. In children who grow up to fight the battles their parents couldn't win. In strangers who are inspired to stand up against evil. In a world that becomes just a little bit better because one person refused to look away from suffering. Roberto Martinez had looked, had acted, had paid the ultimate price, but his daughter carried on his work, and that, in the end, was the truest form of justice.